Greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. His name is Todd Erzin. Over there is Aaron McIntyre. Somehow I ended up being the guy that wore the Chiefs jersey today. Now you? Or did you just know I was going to do this so you didn't want to match? Is that what happened?
I've got cool. Chiefs gear on.
I know. But we probably didn't want to match. That's kind of a chick thing. That's a dude code violation, even if it's unintentional.
Let's move on.
Indeed, yeah, I'm already uncomfortable. Todd, your thoughts.
Talking about outfits already. This is swimming.
Well, I mean, I saw you over there smacking your lips like Lindsey Graham, so that's why I went to you. Thoughts?
No,
I didn't see that.
Turn it. You just dove right in and started talking about outfits right away on a Friday. I mean...
And we are joined, or at least we will be here in a moment, by a conservative comedian, friend of the show, Tim Young, who is going to be our guest today on the Deace Group. And we are brought to you by both Todd's Fetishes and our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every freedom-loving American. They've got the same values of faith, family, and freedom that you do. But don't just buy their coffee for that reason. Buy it because it's good coffee. All right? It's good coffee. Trust Aaron. Coffee is a food group to Aaron. And he raves about First Cup Coffee Company. They put the roast on date right there on everything you buy so that you can see that it was sent to you within days of being roasted, because freshness is also one of their big hallmarks. Get a discount today when you go to firstcup.com and use the promo code DACE. Again, get a discount today at firstcup.com when you use the promo code DACE. Coming up next hour, it'll be your turn with some Feedback Friday. But first, it is time for the Deace Group. Hello there to Tim. Good to have you back with us here for the first time in 2025. Brother, let's get it going with issue 1. Bleep, Lord Nefarious says.
Everything's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay.
I have a show of hands. How many of you believe that racism and misogyny played a role in Vice President Harris's defeat? Okay. So, that's good. You all passed.
May the endless, boundless energy of the universe wrap around you with awe and love and well-becoming. Amen, Ashe, Amin, and may we together make it so.
Hi folks, I'm just getting ready to cross the street for the National Prayer Breakfast. I am not going to this event because I support it. I'm actually going to protest it. And I'm going to be wearing a couple of buttons to explain that. This one, Build This Wall, is about the wall of separation between church and state that our founders intended for our secular republic. And then this one says, Entering Gilead, of course a reference to a creepy dystopic theocracy, which is the slippery slope we're heading down with events like this.
Trust black women, they lead the way. Trust black women, they lead the way. White women, stop abandoning your sisters.
You can Google it, you don't have to trust me. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists.
The only ones that should be deported are the white people, because no white people actually belong in this country.
So where are you going?
DEI is not a threat, it's a gift.
This is a national emergency. In the aftermath of the election, many Democrats needed time to soul search, to grieve, to think, but that time has ended. And that time ended when Elon Musk took control of our country's financial nuclear codes.
Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space.
Also know this is just the beginning. If DOGE attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service.
We are going to fight it legislatively, We're going to fight it in the courts, and we're going to fight it in the streets.
People are going to have to stand up and stand tall and even risk maybe their lives. From day one of MAGA, if you are a public person and you oppose MAGA, you're going to face threats and harassment at a scale that, we've really not experienced much in modern American politics.
The truth is that kitchen knives are perhaps 25% of the knives used in most of the terrible crimes. There is areas of innovation that we can do with kitchen knives. I hate to say it, not all kitchen knives need to have a point on them. So while, you've got your granddad's sword on there and you want that, that's fine, of course, but it is leaving a loophole for someone to carry a ninja sword. So let's ban them all, and if you have one of those knives, get a license for it. Simple as that.
So looking ahead, should Kamala Harris run again?
Yes, she wants to.
You think she could win?
I believe she can.
I lost it and burst out laughing at the
trust black women
to the tune of When the Saints Go Marching In. I had not seen that. Okay. 2, Aaron, make sure to bookmark that clip of Elizabeth Warren I lost my bowels over 3 days ago on the show, because you're going to be hard pressed. Now, something tells me it's going to happen, but we will be hard pressed to come up with a better soundbite of the year than that. I mean, the amount of self-refuting dumbassery in that one clip, all right, is legendary. 3rd, all right, you will be getting an angry phone call from my wife here after the program, because she's very much looking forward to, we've got one kid left in the house and he's out with his girlfriend tonight. And she's very much looking forward to a date night with the husband, if you know what I'm saying, brother. All right. And I've been getting flirty texts and everything else all morning long. And then you had to put up that mother bleeping David French on there, who's a human erectile dysfunction video. That's essentially an abstinence class in personified. Okay. And whatever is left of my 51 and a half years of fleeting testosterone, I just felt like there's literally just like a glaze over this desk as it came out of my pores, whatever was left of my fleeting testosterone level after you subjecting me to David frickin' French.
A what over the desk?
Okay, like a glaze. You see? I didn't even know what the word glaze meant. I thought you only put glaze on a donut, and then you made me watch David French. All right, now I know what chartreuse is, and I'm gonna go check out the sweater vests while I'm at it.
It was bad.
Goodness gracious. Tim Young.
Yeah.
What was the most vile of the vile that you were just subjected to, and why?
There was nothing vile there. I thought that was actually like that was the lamest thing you guys have ever shown me across the board since I've been a guest on your show. I feel like we're winning watching that now. And by the way, I'm going to criticize Aaron for the first time ever. When Chuck Schumer talked about getting rid of agencies on the floor of the Senate, you cut it just before he said we were going to cut the IRS next. I mean, that was like, I cheered when he said that. I was like, you're campaigning for a Trump third term now. I saw nothing bad. I mean, they were lunatics, but it all helps us out in the end. Now we know that in the 2024 election. So I'm giving this a 1 this week.
Wow. He didn't even wait for the exit question. Aaron, you have been called out.
Yeah, he's done this the last like 3 times he's been on our show, though. He said
well, I don't like you.
That's the truest thing that's ever been said on this show. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not in power. So I kind of get where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. These people are not in power in name only right now, but they are absolutely as nuts as they have ever been.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the question. Let me throw this at you, Tim. If they had won, would any of these clips essentially have been any different?
Well, yeah, because we wouldn't have any. It would be a race to see which one of us would be in the gulag first. I think that we'd all be way there. So there would be no editing and no clips and no show.
That's true. I don't know how good the Wi-Fi would be on the trains. We would have to find out. Indeed. Todd, your thoughts? What was the most vile of the vile that you just were subjected to? Or did you come away with this, with Tim's, up with people? Hey, we have reduced these people to this level of lunacy. It's all they have left.
I am not immune to Tim's sensibility on this one. But I'm going to go with Idris Elba. Like,
Yeah, what was that?
This is a man.
It's campaigning for common sense knife control.
Yes, this is
satire
a
is
man
becoming reality.
Who, for the last 5 years or so, has been considered to be the next James Bond.
What's his body count in film and television productions? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, no. There's nothing Bondian at all about this. You're a Bond villain. Congratulations, you've played yourself. Which is he's proving the point. Honestly, he should be hired right now. By what's the NRA and the other one too? That's
Gun Owners of America.
Gun Owners of America. Because really, they've always take the guns away. This is the best promo possibly for gun ownership possible. Because really, we get rid of the guns, and now you're this lamely going after the knives. You know, this is insanity.
So, Aaron, that video is real.
Yeah, he's got a new documentary out talking all about this. This was something
that's not satire. That's real.
That's real. This is something that a place like the Babylon Bee would have written satire about, like banning letter openers to stem the epidemic of letter opener crimes.
And to get a permit for your kitchen knives.
If you think this is just some guy with his you-know-what flapping in the wind out there, he's a famous actor, world-famous actor. There was a member of parliament that came out this week. Hey, you know what? Actually, come to think of it, knife control might not be a bad idea after all.
If you want to know why your girls are getting in the UK are getting raped by Muslims, well, those are your men. That would be why. That would be the answer to that question then. Tragically, Aaron, as you were putting this together, what stood out the most to you?
Well, I was going to go with Idris Elba as well, so probably an honorable mention. Well, I was going to go with David French, so then we're working our way down the list here.
Let's not do that again.
Let's just go to the very end. Jamie Harrison, the outgoing DNC chair, saying, yeah, why not? Let's run Kamala Harris again. Yes, please do that.
That's who that was? I thought it was the Nutty Professor.
Here's the thing, though. If they don't have a charismatic Obama-like figure, and when the people we elect actually have an agenda that they focus on rather than pissing contest or rake steps or fear of what a bunch of people who will never vote for me ever are going to say if I do things, but actually get elected and then pursue the agenda they got elected on and do so even quasi-effectively. This is all they have. This is so much of your montage is what I have said for years after doing 2 years of contributor work on MSNBC and over 50 appearances. And I just came away thinking, there's nothing there. There is no understanding of facts or read of history that we don't have to just roll over for these people. There's literally nothing there. They have turned their own sinfulness, like the welfare state. Hey, covetousness now is a policy, and now in the next generation, it's their own psychoses, our policies. We've got a woman going on CNN this week admitting that she sucks at her job because they keep getting underpaid wherever I go, and somehow that's an actual valid position. Elizabeth Warren, well, I mean, these people's products are so bad they might get sued successfully and stop making them. That's your position? There's nothing there. There's never been anything there. Never. There's never been anything there. If they had something there that was smart this entire time, they would have had something else to say other than you're racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobic bigots. They didn't skip over all the really smart stuff they know and think in order and then just settle for the low-lying fruit. That's all they have. There's nothing else there. It's a movement for people who do not want to repent of their sins or confront their own psychoses. That's all that it is, and that's all that it's ever been, and it's the politically institutionalizing of said things. My own unrepentant sinfulness and my own untreated psychoses. That's all that it's ever been. And I don't know why it took 40 damn years for us to finally just get so pushed on this that we finally decided to punch back sufficiently in order to expose this to everybody.
They are a self-fulfilling prophecy. They might have more wins in the future. They might have more even national wins in the future, in the next generation. But they have made their bed. And this was actually illustrated just this morning in your post about John Fetterman. They are utterly controlled by these impulses.
Yes.
Based Fetterman doesn't exist. He really doesn't.
Yep.
Has some good instincts every now and then, but based Fetterman doesn't exist because the lowest common denominator on that side of the political aisle is exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So they are absolutely attached at the hip to all of this madness.
It's the
absolutely.
Borg.
They
It's
might
the
win,
Borg.
and I don't want people to get overconfident going forward. They might win some elections, but just know that they have made their bed. They are lying down in it, and they're not getting out.
No, they're going to see the worldview through to the end, which is why it just has to be defeated. Let's get to the exit question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the odds Joe Biden could have possibly resisted not sniffing the hair of all the little girls Donald Trump was surrounded by at his executive order signing this week, protecting women's sports. And 10 being the odds, Lindsey Graham wasn't tempted to creep on any of the women at the event, regardless of their age group whatsoever. Rank this week's level of total depravity. Aaron.
10.
Tim is a 1.
1.
Tim is still a 1. Tim is happy.
I'll go 5.
You'll go 5. Todd is happy. Is that the lowest score that Todd has ever given?
I don't know ever, but it's been a very, very...
I'm rubbing off on him. This is good. Todd, you're looking happy and put together today. You don't look like you're depressed for once. This is good.
So there's a glaze on the desk. Tim is rubbing off on Todd.
You did this.
No.
You put David French in the first freaking element of this show. What did you think was going to happen? What did you think would occur when that happened? Let's get to issue 2. USAID, the tip of the iceberg.
Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has set its sights on the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, during an X space at the start of the week. Musk says it became quickly apparent the agency is rotten to its core.
What we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. And so at the point at which you don't merely, like, if you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a bowl of worms, it's hopeless. And USAID is a bowl of worms. Mm-hmm. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt brought receipts this week for what exactly your taxpayer dollars are funding via USAID.
$1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap.
That wasn't all. We also learned Christianity Today and the subversive ministry that David French and Russell Moore are involved in allegedly received taxpayer monies as well via USAID. But the piece de resistance of this saga is the revelation that your taxpayer money funded the left-wing media outlet Politico to the tune of over $8 million. Other than that, though, your federal government is definitely working for you.
The disclosures that have come out of this and continue to come out of it, there is a Twitter account, or an X account in particular. Remind me her name.
Data Republican.
Data Republican. Thank you. I mean, she has, remember Ethical Skeptic?
Yeah.
You know, who really went through, even at a level that, frankly, I'm just not smart enough and qualified to do, the COVID data, and just exposing the fallacies of how much of that did not add up. She's kind of become, because my understanding is as a woman, she's kind of become the ethical skeptic of this USAID story, and how she has gone in and been able to accumulate what's in this database and for public consumption. And these numbers are, for those of us, Tim and Todd and I would be, Aaron would not. For those of us old enough to remember the U.S. Bank, the U.S. or the congressional banking scandal. Okay, where congressmen could literally just go in there and kite checks to one another from the House bank and just float each other money and not have to pay it back, right? And that was really the issue, frankly, that kind of launched Rush into the stratosphere, was taking that issue on and kind of helped that, along with Hillary Care, basically set the stage for the 94 Republican congressional takeover, which hadn't happened in like 50 years up until that point. This is way beyond that. This is way beyond that. And keep in mind, too, this is like 0.1% of the federal government, man. When we start getting to the rest of these NGOs, what are we going to find? All right. So, Tim, let me start there with you. How far down does this rabbit hole go, do you think?
Well, in the middle of everything here with USAID, we forget that the $1 billion that Joe Biden held over the head of Ukraine came from USAID.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that we totally forget about that in the middle of everything else that's going on. Wait till we get to Medicare and Medicaid and all the fraud there. This just keeps going. And I bet you by the time we're finished with this, if we really dig in, it's going to take probably half a century to dig into all of the fraud and abuse in this country. And I mean that. We're probably, I bet half of our federal spending is corrupt.
Well, since we're talking about how many trillions, brother, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. Yeah. I think what we're learning here is we're getting the quantification, Tim, and the itemization that essentially the American left and elements on the controlled opposition right friendly to them were essentially subsidized and kept afloat by the taxpayer and the printing press over there at the Treasury to produce culturally subversive content and regime-affirming narratives that if they had to go out and sell advertising and actually demonstrate there's a market for this content, would have never been able to sustain itself on its own. And so we're really talking about the term we often use today is grift, but the old-fashioned term for this in politics is patronage. This is quite likely the largest patronage network we've ever seen from a gangster government, like in the history of humanity, is really probably what we're looking at.
Yeah, take a look at what Dick Cheney had his hand in back in the day too, and the Cheney family when we went to war, the Gulf War. This is both sides of the aisle, the uniparty, as we like to call it sometimes. And there is so much dirty money that has been handed, taxpayer money that's been handed out to ridiculous NGOs and programs. Like I said, I think it's going to take a half century before we get into literally everything that happened.
Todd, we have sat here at times through the course of our show, and you've been here from you and I having private conversations about whether I should accept a job offer from Donald Trump, to we have to stop this guy at all costs, to we have to help this guy win at all costs. So, you have been here as my co-pilot, as I've held every position on the right on Trump over the years you could have and not literally go insane or be bought off. Okay. And one of the things, regardless of whichever of those postures we've had, we've been mystified by is, what is it about this guy who used to donate to Al Sharpton and Planned Parenthood that just makes these people go nuts? What is it? Okay. Because we are so ideologically driven on the right that we're constantly and maybe only singularly filtering things through that prism, right? Okay. And I think with this story in particular, we're maybe starting to get the answer to what it is about him. At first we thought, well, it's because he used to be one of them and then he joined up with us and so they feel betrayed and so it's personal, right? Maybe that's what it was in 2015, 2016. But I think what you're seeing now, this might be what has caused them to go insane this entire time. That he would open these vials, these seals, and show people who the Wizard of Oz is, and what's going on behind the curtain, more so than even taking on a particular issue, but expose essentially an entire ecosystem habitat of corruption. I think that we're seeing now maybe what it is about him that they were afraid of all this time.
The irony being, though, that it would never have reached this level had they not overreacted on that front.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you said. But this version of Trump 2.0, does anybody believe Trump 2.0 if he actually had won 4 years ago?
Right.
Well, had he actually been president? No.
And I've asked even people that have loved Trump from the beginning that are friends of mine. And Tim, let me ask you. You're closer to his networking than I am. Do you think if he had won in 2020, we'd be seeing anything close to what we've seen just in the first 3 weeks?
No, he would have allowed, and it was him allowing the media to control the narrative the way that things were then. Yeah. And now he's taken full control. Mm-hmm. He doesn't give an F. I'm editing myself for your show. And it shows. And this is the leadership we need to clean up this country. And it's the right time, right place.
Amen. Go ahead, Todd. Finish your point.
Well, it's that part. Ultimately letting the media on COVID, but that's the primary bear along the lines you're talking about that he poked and they absolutely hated it. And now we know how abundantly clear the link is in media to government in terms of payments, well beyond what Steve and I have diagnosed on this show before Trump even came down the escalator. That fake news part of it is was definitely the camel's nose under the tent on the front that you're talking about.
So, Aaron, we're essentially saying they should have killed him when they had the chance.
Pretty much. Let's go back to the clip that I used in the little intro there of the X space where Elon Musk was talking about USAID and turning his Doge's gaze upon USAID. That was a Twitter space, or an X space, so you can't see their faces, obviously, of the people, the speakers involved with that call. But you know who was one person on that X space? Senator Joni Ernst. I'll tell you this, I would have liked to have paid money to see her face when Elon Musk started talking and referring to USAID as no apple and just a ball of worms. Because this is a slush fund, a patronage network for the entrenched political class in Washington, D.C. And what am I talking? The entrenched political class? It's the uniparty. They're mirror images of one another.
Joni Ernst has spent a decade trying to curry favor to.
Correct. I would have loved to have seen her face as Elon Musk dropped that bomb on that X space. But at the end of the day, it is obviously righteous and important and good work, obviously, to expose how your tax money has been used at a place like USAID. What has been exposed so far? Billions of dollars through DOGE, probably billions of dollars through USAID. That's chiclets. It's not even chicken feed. It's maybe a half a handful of chicken feed when compared to the rest of the federal Leviathan. Mm-hmm. So Tim is not being bombastic or exaggerative to say that this is going to take a generation to unfurl. And so, again, buckle up. I pray that these chiclets, these chicken feeds that are kind of being exposed now through DOGE, I pray that wakes the rest of the population up to say, hey, what else is our taxpayer money being spent on? You know, how far does this actually go down? I hope that is the end result of this crusade, righteous though it is and productive as it has been.
Let's get to the exit question. Predict what, and I want to go to it a couple of minutes early so you guys have time to think and answer thoughtfully. Not that you wouldn't. Exit question. Predict what is the next form of conspired public-private corruption or patronage that will be exposed during the Trump presidency. What do you think the next one will be?
Arrests related to the conspiracy around January 6th and the Fed's role in it, or arresting Katie Hobbs?
Knowing the U.S. attorney in D.C., I could absolutely see if there's there, I could see that the first one happening for sure. I could see that happening. Aaron.
USAID will be linked to receipts for aluminum tubes, tannerite, and detonation devices related to the pipe bombs prior to January 6th.
So you're kind of a vector of what Todd is talking about. What about you, Tim?
I'm kind of hoping USAID gets busted paying for the pre-printed signs for all of the protesters around the country.
That essentially they're the stormtroopers of this patronage network is essentially what we're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's not just one side, man. It's like you said when you mentioned Joni Ernst, it's both sides that have been taken from this till.
I mean, this is the most Iowans since Elon Musk essentially, I don't know how he did it or why, because I don't know the guy. But somehow, ever since he anointed her, one of the minstrels of Doge Court, Iowans were like, wait a minute, Joni Ernst is still our senator. We didn't know, Tim. We have no idea. I mean, she comes home for a motorcycle ride in June. That's all we see of her the rest of the year, unless she's standing behind Glitch, holding him up so he doesn't fall during some press gaggle in the halls of the Senate building. That otherwise, we have no idea who she is or what she does. We have no clue.
It's very important to know that if you visit her office in D.C., she has a popcorn machine in the front, so you can get some free popcorn.
Well, that's good. That's good.
But what you just said there is really important. We have no idea. That's underlying everything we've talked about so far. It's our fault. We let it get to this point.
Correct. We did. Just like I said in the last segment, we allowed the kids that we used to carry our gym bags bully us. Okay.
Yeah.
For 30 years, that was on us. All right. We let the kids that we used to give swirlies to bully us. That's essentially what we did. Okay. I mean, those people screaming in the streets, that we were just all laughing at during Aaron's montage, we allowed them to bully us for the last 3 decades. Exactly. All right, when we come back, is DEI about to DIE? We'll discuss that and more next. back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. With all the optimism going around, I mean, Todd only gave a 5 to Aaron's weekly exorcism. Tim Young, the cynical, borderline nihilistic conservative comedian, gives it a 1 and says, if anything, you cheered me up. All right, listen, that might even mean the real estate market might, well, let me rephrase it. We might have a real estate market again, because we've not had one for the last few years. There's just been a handful of people that could afford 100% higher mortgage payments than they were paying 4 years ago. And then that's been the market, basically. There hasn't been a real estate market in America. So maybe we can even have a real estate market again. So if that's you and you're thinking, hey, spring is just around the corner, maybe get in on some deals or put my house up for sale, make sure you've got an agent that you can trust, whether it's just going across town, across the state, or even all the way across the country. We'll help you find that agent that'll get you across the finish line. And a lot of times they're going to be from right here in the Blaze audience with all of you. And we verify and validate their track records of success. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. All right. So the name says it all. We'll get you started right now at realestateagentsitrust.com. Head over there right now, realestateagentsitrust.com. All right. As we welcome back again, conservative comedian, friend of the program, Tim Young. Good to see you, brother. All right, let's get to issue 3 as we go on with the weekly look at the week that was. Is DEI about to DIE?
General Motors, Pepsi, Disney, and Google are the latest companies in recent days to do the Homer Simpson gif when it comes to their self-imposed and racist DEI programs. Google is the most notable example this week, having said it'll end diversity targets related to hiring and will review other diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The most recent examples stem from Donald Trump's executive actions targeted at eliminating discriminatory hiring and employment practices within the federal government. Still, there are some holdouts like warehouse super chain Costco, who has doubled down on woke DEI practices in recent weeks. But overall, the shift seems to be happening, and it's palpable. The only question is, how permanent will these new practices become?
I am very much looking forward to, gentlemen, the Super Bowl commercials this Sunday, because the Super Bowl is kind of the big and perennial first gathering of Americana every year at the end of January when we were kids, 1st of February now. It is, in terms of a not explicitly religious holiday, it's the largest singular event in America every year. It's the most watched event in the world on television every year. It's the most expensive commercial ad buy in the world every year. And so you get a real idea as agencies are thinking ahead 3, 6, 9 months in advance of writing and producing these ads for these major clients. You get an idea of either A, what the zeitgeist is, or B, what they anticipated it was about to become, right? And so I will be very curious to see, like a few years ago, everywhere was after the gay marriage ruling, every commercial, everybody was gay. Last year was like the only cars left in America were electric cars after the Biden mandate, okay? And so I will be fascinated to see, Tim, what kind of commitment to this messaging was already baked in months ago when these ads had to be produced, right? Compared to the statements they're all making right now. So I know this is an issue you care greatly about, so we hand it off to you first and foremost. What do you think?
Yeah, so I am not just a comedian. I'm not just Mr. Bombastic. I don't know where Bombastic came from Aaron in the last segment, but I'm CEO of a company called Veebs. So Veebs app is a group that we do all of the research into how woke these companies are. And one of the other companies still sticking with their wokeness and DEI is Elf Cosmetics. I'm not a big cosmetics guy, obviously, but their stock's down after we put a report out on them the other day. Put this app on your phone in case you guys are wondering what's going on. You can put the Veebs app on your phone. You can use, and it scans UPC symbols at grocery stores.
Nice.
It tells you right on the spot if something is liberal or conservative. We have a huge team of researchers that are digging into, like, so one of the things.
Dude, why didn't you like text or call me about this? Why am I just now hearing about it? That's freaking awesome.
Well, because you always make me tell jokes on this show. You're like, Dan, you don't let me talk about the real things I do in the world here, Steve. But no, it's amazing. So you put it on your phone and you can scan things. It tells you if it's liberal or conservative. And not only that, it doesn't just talk about the product. We go to the parent company. So we dig in. So like last week when Ben & Jerry's went crazy, and by the way, they announced to the world all sorts of different new BLM, CRT, DEI organizations we had never heard of before that we got to dig into with our research team. Some people were like, oh, we're going to switch to Breyers. Well, get this. Unilever that owns Ben & Jerry's owns 5 or 6 different brands of ice cream. So you're giving the money to the same liberals that are working against America and against conservative politics. And so we, in the app, you scan it, it shows you the parent company, it gives it a rating, how liberal or conservative it is, and it gives you conservative alternatives to go buy from.
That is pretty freaking cool.
We're going to win this culture war, man, and this is the way to do it. You know, I'm not a very serious person when it comes to this stuff, typically on media, but like this company, we're onto something.
That is very cool. Todd, your thoughts on both what Tim said and then also the question at hand. Basically, the question at hand is this: is this temporary hibernation, the Homer Simpson gift back into the bushes for now, and this stuff is just in cryogenic freeze until it can be brought back later, okay? Or are we taking real ground here? Maybe it's both simultaneously.
We're taking real ground, but it's also definitely temporary. Unless the church ultimately changes its game on this, because the church of the left is got this nicer than God thing going on, and the church on the right very much has just leave me alone kind of thing going on. Neither one is actually the gospel. And as long as we keep doing this, people with more religiosity that now we're laughing at and look crazy on Aaron's montage, but that laugh track owned us for the better part of a decade. Mm-hmm. And there's no way around that fact. And as long as the church is not only not combating that, but as I've also said, sometimes running opposition to the sanity. Again, a 3-time divorced guy named Donald Trump, who almost had his head blown off, is the reason this is happening.
Dude, J.K. Rowling, who retconned Albus Dumbledore gay after she made all her movies and her billions, has been braver on the tranny issue than the freaking church has been, Todd.
This is my point, and that's not sustainable. No amount of, and I give credit to Tim on multiple fronts, mocking it as he does in his profession, going into business to do what he can, talking about running, but ultimately, what you're running against is all kinds of people who are being programmed, again, to be either nicer than God or to believe that your birthright as American is to do absolutely nothing as a citizen. Both ultimately will be losers, I promise you.
Aaron? That's well said.
For now, I think 75% of what we're seeing here is please don't sue me. Please don't sue me. That's what we're seeing from 75. I think that's 75% of what we're seeing right now.
I don't want to be in a Robbie Starbuck tweet thread.
Yes. And it's good. That's a good fear. That's a good thing. Yep. Even if it comes from a bad motivation, just of fear, having that sort of fear is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think maybe 25%, and I'm probably being generous about this, 25% is probably some of these CEOs at these companies being like, holy bleep, did we let the genie out of the bottle here? Let's try to put it back in the bottle. And again, 25%, probably being very generous about that. But I think regardless of the motivations here, the tide is shifting, and I think at least on some level, they feel it and they're respecting it, and I think that's a good thing overall. It's not over though.
I think we need to stress more an important point you just made, Aaron, that it is a good thing if they are doing it against their will.
Correct.
And here's why. The reason why that we were fearful that this was going to become a zero-sum game and we were at DEFCON 1 is if there's no more market pressures to bear, if there's no space where leverage can be exerted other than direct conflict with the opposition in a zero-sum winner or loser, okay? If there's no cartilage left in the knee, if there's no amount of market share that they could suffer that would cause them to turn away from doing this to us, then you are literally at Bull Run, okay? I mean, that's the North and the South. That there's no further Missouri compromises. There's no further opportunities whatsoever to avoid just a head-on collision over a clash of worldviews. For those of us with kids and grandkids, if we are finding out that actually there are still some price points and some pressure points, maybe they're higher than they were when we were kids. But I was beginning to think, I got to tell you, these didn't exist at all. Okay. That there was just no amount of money they weren't willing to lose. Nothing. Now, maybe this goes hand in hand with the last topic we did, guys. which is, well, if we're going to dent their patronage network, now there are price points where they're vulnerable. You see what I'm saying? That if there's just not access to an endless fleet of NGOs calling up the Treasury, hey, we need another 500 copy sheets for Acme Business A, okay, to keep them afloat, and Show B on MSNBC to keep it on the air. If that's not going to happen anymore, and then they have to be dragged kicking and screaming into that arena again, where, hey, let's see what the public actually wants, yours or mine, and there are pressure points, then that I think severely lessens the overall tension in the culture, in my view.
It should.
It should. Or should anyway. Yeah.
If we want to be active participants in that going forward, and do the role both federally and locally that we are called to do to make sure that it's sustainable.
Let's get to the exit question. What do you think will end up being the biggest shibboleth smashed by the Trump administration this year? Or do you think it'll be DEI? We're watching it happen right now. Aaron, what say you?
Being that we've already gotten a head start on the DEI, you look at last summer, last June, that was when Target really started to scale back their pride stuff. Now, scale back when it comes to Target, that's like, I don't know.
They went from doing tranny surgeries to offering them.
Yeah, they took a little cup, went into the ocean, got a little cup of ocean water out of the ocean, and that's their scaling back. But that started last summer. That's just one indication. So I do think it is going to be DEI and the elevation of the idealistic meritocracy.
Okay, Todd.
Well, Trump just tweeted out something either today or yesterday about balancing the budget. Man, if he can do that, I mean, right now that ain't no executive order. That's going to take Congress. If he can do that, it isn't just one shibboleth.
I think 2000 was the last time we had a balanced budget. Bill Clinton's last year in office, I think, was the last time.
Yeah, the autopilot of the current Congress will be shattered, and that's something.
Tim, what do you think it'll be?
I think both of you guys are right on this one, and that's why Democrats were doing their phony little filibuster against Russ' vote. I think that we're going to be very close to a balanced budget, and DEI is going to go down at the same time. OMB is such a critical organization, and I think you got the right guy in there. That's why we went back to the same guy they had last time that eliminated CRT, but he's going to be supercharged just like Trump is.
Hope you guys are all right. Let's get to our kicker topic here on issue 4. What is more likely to actually happen? Not just be a leverage point, a negotiating point, a talking point, a troll, but actually happen. What do you think it'll be? Do you think it's the MAGA strip in Gaza, or do you think it's USA Greenland, and why? Todd?
I think it's USA Greenland. I think that is more likely as a tactical choice versus of ownership versus a leverage play. That
it'll also be a lot less expensive.
Correct.
On many fronts.
That's what I was
including
just going to
human
say.
resources. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy off the entire population of Greenland for less than 0.5% of the United States GDP. So that's much easier to sell politically. So it's USA Greenland for sure.
Tim, are you going to make it 3 for 3? You're going to be the
I'm
outlier.
going to go 3 for 3 because I think even wasn't there a poll at some point that said 57% of Greenlanders, or whatever you call them, were cool with it?
Yep. I mean, a lot of benefits if you're a Greenlander, no doubt about that. All right, let's go to our predictions. Aaron.
Do we even need to go?
That's why I'm going to you first. Let's just get it out of the way.
Yes. Eagles just stomped the Chiefs on Sunday.
The emotional hedge?
No, this is not an emotional hedge. My name is not Steve. I don't do these things. I really believe...
Except every week that you do. I
really believe that the Eagles are just... I mean, it's going to be over at halftime.
Here's the thing. If the Eagles win, that's what will have to happen. Their defensive front will have to do to Mahomes what the Buccaneers did when they played them in the Super Bowl. Because I think everyone on planet Earth, every Homo sapien knows, no one's run into their betting app, all right, to bet Eagles money line. Eagles up 26-24, 1:10 to go in the game. Pat Mahomes gets the ball of the 17. No one's jumping to their sports betting app to money line the Eagles. Everybody knows how that story is going to end, right? Okay? So I think for the Eagles to win, I think they clearly have to be the superior team. But that was an emotional hedge. Yes. Tim, what's your prediction?
Well, look, if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, one of the refs will get the MVP. But
you too. Good grief!
My weekend reading this fantastic. That's my predictions. I'm going to read this fantastic book. I have a Project 2025, a hard copy of it here, and I'm going to be doing more reading than usual and cheering along.
It's that is a comedian thing to do. Is literally a policy guidebook is light reading. That's beautiful. I love that. Did you guys see the sign I sent you that someone held up at the March for Life last weekend?
Yes, but I can't.
Protect life like the refs protect Pat Mahomes. Yes, somebody held that sign up in D.C. at the March for Life. That's great. Todd, what's your prediction this week?
Let's see. All of Sports Pro Land is an emotional hedge. I mean, this is
very true.
Which is why you should.
Yep. I turn things on and off based on how my team is emotionally making me feel.
As a man, everybody should take a step back. And I think by the end of the year, this Paula White thing, along with a lot of the other things going on in Protestant back and forth land, I think by the end of the year, at least it will be planned, that there will be something like an American Protestant Council of Nicaea. I think there's people going to come together and say, this is, look, if Donald Trump 3-time divorce can get his act together like this and we just keep, pissing down our leg, we got to do something about this. I vote for it. I mean, you two tell me if I'm wrong, if that's insane. But the voice of the church across the board is getting in the way of a lot of good things, and we need to deal with it. And
William, I just got a direct message from William Wolf at the Center for Baptist Leadership. Let me just read it to you here.
I saw this.
You saw this too?
Yeah.
Okay, because my Twitter's locked up, but apparently Southern Baptist Convention, or at least elements of it, were taking USAID money. Some kind of grant money from the Biden administration for refugee resettlement.
U.S. Catholic Charities, Lutheran Human Services, all of it. I mean, it's utterly broken.
Yeah. My prediction is the grift exposing is not going to stop with USAID. And not even just because it's the right thing to do, but politically. Next year, in fact, if Republicans have a good midterm election next year, this will be one of the key issues. Because once we get into an election year, it's going to be very difficult to get Republicans in state legislatures or Congresses to do anything other than play prevent defense. So then what is an offensive talking point that you can keep alive, all right, while you're trying to hold back the opposition in a midterm election? What would produce enough energy, like the hate energy that typically goes against you if your team wins the presidential election in the next midterm, right? This would. Exposing more and more of this would, especially because most of the people, almost everybody that's going to get exposed, even if they're Republicans, aren't people that want Trump and his people to be victorious anyway on the right. So there's almost no political calculus blowback, collateral damage for Trump and his people to continue to do this. So, Tim, good to see you as always, man. Appreciate you. All right.
For having me.
And we're going to definitely check out that Veeves app, man. That sounds very cool. We'll come back. We're going to check out what you think with Feedback Friday in a moment. All right, we are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzen. I'm Steve Deace. Don't forget, you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE is how you can email us. You can also like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, if you love the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, whichever podcast platform you prefer, or maybe just post one on all of them. Also, hit subscribe or follow on iTunes, and that way every time we do a new show, you can guarantee it shows up in your podcast feed every time. And thank you if you've done either or both of those things for us, and if you would consider doing them for us today, a preemptive thank you for that as well. This part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. Are you looking to align your investments with your conservative values and take more control over your investment choices? Well, many investors don't realize they can influence company policies companies such as DEI, CRT, ESG by exercising shareholder proxy voting and by reducing their investments in companies that don't share their conservative values. Constitution Wealth helps clients make informed investment decisions that reflect their principles. Their team of investment professionals are passionate about helping you align your investments with your traditional values. So if you're ready to learn more about how to invest, how your investments can better match your principles, visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze, constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and before considering their services, you should carefully review Constitution Wealth's disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand all material risks, conflicts of interest, and fees. All investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. This is a paid endorsement. I'm not a client of the firm. All right. Are we ready for some Feedback Friday?
You bet.
Let's
All
go.
right, let's rock and roll here. Get ready for this one from Jeff Morris in Reno, Nevada. He says, I grew up in the D.C. metro. As a young child, my mother and father worked in the legislative and executive swamp. My father, in particular, made his way up the chain of jobs to an appointed position under Ronald Reagan in his second term. That position, Jeff says, Director of USAID.
Huh.
His confirmation hearing was quite contentious as he was grilled by Democrat senators, and my dad held his own just as well as today's appointees are doing. He made it his mission to de-bureaucratize the agency. I was only 18 to 21 when he undertook this task and was as successful as you could be. I'm very proud of him for what he did during that time in his life. Since he left and Clinton, Bush II, and Obama got their claws on it, the agency changed to what we see today. I cheer very loudly for what our president is doing this moment. Long overdue, long awaited. Shut it down and fulfill my dad's dream. As you may be able to discern, I'm taking all these wins and rejoicing loudly, and you'll not see many emails from me decrying a missed opportunity because there aren't many. We're doing great stuff right now. That's from Jeff Morris in Reno, Nevada. That is small world crazy.
Well, I mean, Clinton and Obama saw our soft underbelly, and they exploited it. This is the tragedy of American compassion. Even the author of that book ultimately is now the Marvin Olansky, as I understand it, is basically David French. Right now, he wrote that book, The Tragedy of American Compassion. Which
then he forgot about that, apparently.
Yeah, which basically says, if you do not forsake your birthright as a member of the church and give it over to the government in the name of efficiencies, because it will become USAID. That's the book. So we got. Will we learn the lessons? Will we, the people, the church, learn the lessons?
Seems to be a lot of that going around these days, forgetting people or people writing books and then forgetting they wrote the books. Jonah Goldberg, anybody, liberal fascism, particularly at the last part of that note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, taking the W's where they come. And I think one thing that I've seen through these confirmation processes is that they're all singing the same tune. There's nobody kind of having their own agenda. They're all kind of within the same, they're all singing the same stuff. Okay. That's an opportunity. That's a great opportunity. But it's only an opportunity kind of along the lines of what I said leading into the election. It's only an opportunity in so much as people out here in the cheap seats, I'm using air quotes for those of you listening, people out here in the cheap seats use this air cover to get rid of the USAID in their churches, the USAID in their school board, town, city council, what have you. You get what I'm saying. You have the air cover right now. Advance.
I mean, large patronage networks have been going on in this world forever. I mean, this is essentially what St. Paul encounters in Ephesus. This is a large patronage network around the worship of Artemis or Diana. And where he faces a unique challenge when he goes to bring the gospel there, because it's not just that he is what he represents is an existential threat spiritually, but much of the basis of the local economy, people's jobs, putting food on their table, is in line with the marketing and the monetization of Artemis and Diana. And so now it's not just people that are spiritually engaged, but just an everyday person who could care less. Who's the new gods? What are the new idols? You know, new gods from Olympus or from Rome just dropped. Cool. Just tell me who I got to, genuflect to. That's great. Now you're taking food off my table, brother. Right? I think this is kind of what Thomas Massey was alluding to when he put on X this morning. I mean, what Musk is doing puts him square in the crosshairs of the Uniparty. So I hope his security is good, and I'm not even I'm not marginally exaggerating that. I mean, I hope his security is really good. We still don't know how the math club guy was able to Spider-Man the entire Secret Service and local Pennsylvania police to get off a clear shot right at the head. We have no idea how he did that. How he got within 500 yards of the Republican nominee for president, but he was taken out at more than twice that distance after he got his shot off. Inexplicable. We have no idea how the second attempted shooter got a hold of Trump's private schedule to know where he was going to be on a private golf course on something that was not on his public schedule. We have no idea how he got there, as we have no clue. So I hope Elon Musk's security is really good. Really good.
Well, you've said many times regarding that in combination with getting through the lawfare that there's something about the hand of God in all this. Mm-hmm. I don't counter that at all. I simply will say I'm regularly reminded of, and Aaron's montage brought it to mind. My biggest concern is what we've had on the show multiple times to have Jonathan Cahn tell us about. If the grace of God ultimately saved us on multiple levels when we didn't deserve it, from however many demons were after us, and we don't acknowledge our role in it individually and as a church in terms of our complicity therein, if we do not repent of that, what happens to the demons the next time around? They come back 70-fold. That's my biggest concern about that.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Let's continue on with this one from Brad Callaghan. He says, I was very skeptical of an upcoming second Trump administration, absolutely sure that it was going to be a train wreck. I was very critical of anyone, including yourself, Steve, that was optimistic about what was coming. I felt like we had all just gone past the last exit before the bridge was out. To be clear, I certainly didn't want Kamala to win for sure, but felt that giving Trump the nomination over DeSantis was throwing away our last chance. Man, I've never been so happy to have been wrong. I don't know how you knew, but you were right. My apologies. I haven't been this optimistic since Reagan. We have a long way to go, but I feel Trump is certainly trying and taking it seriously. And that means a lot because we all have a lot at stake.
Well, a person like this exists?
Yeah, I've actually gotten several of these.
Yeah, I have too.
I have gotten several of them. And this wasn't included in Brad's, but several others I've gotten have said, hey, I now can see when I'm seeing some of the people I was aligned with in the last primary are now criticizing and ripping Trump for doing the stuff that we said we loved DeSantis did.
Yeah.
I just have to come to the conclusion that basically they were just never Trump and just using DeSantis as a cudgel and an excuse. And I agree with that. Yes. Again, I mean, I don't care who wins the game on Sunday. I don't. If anything, I actually have a futures on the Eagles. I didn't get one on the Chiefs because even in January, it wasn't worth the purchase. The odds were too bad. All right. So if I've got any vested interest, it would be on the Eagles winning. So why am I wearing this jersey? Because the guy who wore it is a total badass. I am for here. This is, if you want to figure me out, it doesn't ask these guys. They've worked with me every day for a decade. I'm really uncomplicated. You may not know how specifically a given reaction from me will be. I can be moody like anybody else, right? So I could be more enthusiastic about something you thought I'd be kind of enthusiastic about. I might not be enthusiastic at all about something you think I'd be kind of enthusiastic about, okay? So I can be moody. And so the given reaction to something I have certainly can be mercurial. Fair? You never know on a given day sometimes,
right?
Okay? But whether I will react to something positively or negatively is pretty uncomplicated. The tenor of how positive or negative it could be complicated, but it's real simple for me. If you're doing something I like and believe in, I like it and I believe in it. And if you're not, I don't. Guys, honestly, is that any more complicated than that? Really?
No.
And that's becoming clearer and clearer as time goes on. And as you've said, you've had to, and all of us have had to shatter some of our own misguided notions about the Republican Party, et cetera, et cetera. We've all become more simplistic about this as we've weighed the evidence. I mean, look what COVID did.
If you had told me that first of all, I'd be talking to an actual Republican senator from Wisconsin that was worth anything 10 years ago, that would have shocked me. 2, if you'd have told me that part of the conversation that I had with Ron Johnson yesterday was, there's actually a couple of these issues that the left actually won the argument with me on. Forever War and Big Pharma. But I have nobody left who do I go to? So you know what you guys were right about. Like I had some libertarian friends, you guys are kind of right about that whole perpetual surveillance state thing. You were right about that. So my bust. I've got no liberals to go to anymore to say, you guys were right about that all those years in the 80s and 90s. You turned out to be right about that. Because now they're the whores for the corporations and they're the whores for the defense contractors. And Dick Cheney's, there's this one guy who for years has, and he's good natured, doesn't bother me at all, but he has just kind of, been trolling me from the other side, going back to when I was local on WHO radio. And he did it again over something a couple days ago. And I don't have time to respond to a lot of comments. I just don't. But to this one, I responded and said, brother, Dick, I don't know why because he brought up Iraq, the Iraq War. I said, well, first of all, almost the entirety of my career, I've been somewhere from skeptical to condemning about how that entire policy played itself out. But number 2, Dick Cheney endorsed your side, bro. And Liz Cheney, you guys have lionized her. I mean, the Republican Party for 3 straight presidential election cycles has nominated Donald Trump, who has many of the exact same thoughts about the Iraq War that you do. And he's been nominated as the face and the standard bearer of the party 3 cycles in a row, more than a decade. These are arguments from 2005, man. Update your talking points, okay?
Yeah, see, the reason things have become more simple is because over time you thought you were part of the Avengers, and then you realized the whole oh my god,
more like the
Hydra?
Suicide Squad.
Hydra's been inside.
Hydra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah. And I just, to stop myself from going crazy, I had to learn 2 things. 1, people are not formulas. We're just not, and that the reason why God works through problematic people is because there's only problematic people. So I like I said, like last week or a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, so all my reform buddies who think Catholics are a false church want us to all go back to the politics of Pat Buchanan, who was a devout Todd
Catholic.
Yes. I don't know how to do that math. I don't. So you know what? Not if I don't know how to do it, it's not my math to do. Okay? So if I like what Pat Buchanan has to say, I'm in. If I don't, I'm not. And then if Pat Buchanan he can't now because he's not here with us, but if people that love him and want to carry on his legacy want to have an argument with me, and if they beat me in the argument, like my liberal friends beat me on Big Pharma and beat me on Forever War, I'll admit it. And my libertarian friends beat me on the surveillance state, I'll admit it. But I will admit also, it's not easy to get me to admit that. All right. So you got to beat me sound. Okay. Because I don't give up the ghost easily. But if you do, I'll change based on what the data and everything says. I'm into what I'm into. I believe what I believe. And if you're into the same thing and believe what I do and want to win, then regardless of what you thought of me last time or you're going to think of me next time, I'm good with that. Here's the other thing I had to learn. And I think this would benefit a lot of people because I'm seeing a lot of people, maybe they just now knew that Trump and Paula White were a thing. Okay. On purpose, I have not addressed this on X at all on purpose. And there's 2 reasons for this. One is all these Never Trump people that basically were using Ron DeSantis as their cover shield are in my mentions. How many times have I called Paula White and like a heretic arch heretic? How many times have we done that show?
Do you remember that montage I put together?
Yeah.
Back in 9 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty, a buddy of mine in the ministry was invited by her to go and meet Trump during the election cycle. I texted him back. I said, hey, maybe you could get her to actually preach the gospel for the first time. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Okay? So why haven't I kvetched about this on X like everybody else is on both sides? Well, one, my mentions are people who act like I've never talked about Paula White before, or I've suddenly whitewashed who she is because I like what Trump's policies are. I've not done either one of them. But if you're jumping on that now, that tells me that your agenda is not what's best for America. It's you and what you want. You want vindication. You want to be right. Or you're just a troll or you're a bot. So you're not serious. The other factor here is I had to learn this saying, and I saw this saying in the scriptures a couple of times, and I had to go, what does this mean? Don't muzzle the ox while it's treading its grain. The Old Testament says this. Paul says this in the New Testament, quoting from it. I'm like, what is that? That kind of sounds like an odd thing to us, you know? I mean,
but everybody.
How do you relate to the oxen at your house, Todd? Okay.
But everybody back then knew exactly what it meant.
Yes, but I did not know in the 21st century what don't muzzle an ox, because the closest I've ever gotten to an ox was reading about Paul Bunyan as a little kid. Okay, and what was his ox name? Bluebell or something like that. Okay, I don't know what that means. I've never muzzled anything as far as I know. Okay, so I had to look up what that meant, and what it essentially means is, if somebody for the most part is doing the right thing, for the most part, get out of their way and let them do it. That's what it means. May not be your ox, might not be your muzzle, might not be the way the ox might not be going down the rows the way you'd want him to do, or maybe not even the best way they could do it. But the job of the ox out in the field is to what? Tread the grain. So if the grain's getting treaded out, might not be your grain, might not be the grain, the treading the way that you think is best, might not be the most effective or ergonomic means of treading said grain. But the ox is doing its thing nevertheless. So get out of its way and let it cook. It's the Bible Times version of let him cook. That's essentially what it means. I had to learn this because I found myself just trying to win the exacta on every proposition and every person. And then I'd be convinced that this person is 100% in and principled. And then like a week later, they'd remind me they're a human being and I didn't know what to do with that. And I was just going insane, basically. Like I see friends of mine do now. Just go insane. Take a deep breath. And this is for all y'all. Don't muzzle the ox while it's treading its grain. Let me just give you one example. I have an immense amount of respect for Ben Shapiro, and I've said on my show how many times over the years you guys have worked here, there are few intellects that when I know they're coming on the show, I make sure I'm prepped, that I just don't think I can just come right in here, open up the brain, and let's let it rip. Him and Newt Gingrich are the only two, and I've said that how many times, right? Yeah. You guys, you and Sarah and your ilk have had run-ins with him over vaccines for how many years, right?
Right.
And I didn't get involved. Not my fight. You guys have your own things, and you guys do your thing, right? Because overall, I really liked him. My positions were probably closer to Shapiro's. I just didn't understand why he was so angry about it. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for his overall contribution to my value system and his intellect.
As do I, sure.
In other words, the ox was treading its grain.
Yes.
Then we get to COVID.
Yeah.
And now the guy with one of the greatest intellects our movement's ever produced, at a moment we need it maybe more than any other, is out there using his show to pimp people he's putting Scott Gottlieb on his show. Total big pharma hack. All right. My wife's a doctor, and so take every shot 1,000,000 times. Right. So when it was now here's the thing. That ox, I'm trying to tread my grain. Right. I'm doing my thing. Right. OK. But now that ox is getting in the way of me treading my grain. Right. So guess now see what I'm trying to say with this here?
Yeah.
When he's fighting that with you guys, that's your grain, and that's his grain. Okay, your grains you're getting in the way of your oxes are fighting each other. Who gets to tread the grain? You need to have that fight because only one ox can tread the grain at one time, right?
Right.
But was that my grain at that time?
It was not.
It was not. And there were other areas where I have and continue to have a deep amount of agreement and respect with Ben. And so for me, it wasn't worth interrupting those oxes treading their grains at those times for an ox that was not my ox, right?
Yes.
But then when he starts swerving into, let's legitimize Scott Gottlieb and let's use one of the largest platforms on the right to pimp the shot and everything else, that is when I decided and made the decision on my own, this is getting in the way of my ox treading its grain and it has to be confronted. Tucker Carlson's another example. I love Tucker to death. I love him personally to death. I think his views on Israel are whack, wickety whack, 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 like wickety whack. On the other hand, I'm hesitant to get too angry about it because a lot of it is born out of, you spend more than 5 minutes with the guy, a deep intellectual curiosity that has actually served the cause of humanity very well on multiple fronts, including he was the only show on Fox News that put me ever on the air in prime time. He was the only one. And the second time our book went number one, it's because he put us back on the air after we started to drop off and we went number one again. So on a given day, if Tucker wants to lose his poop over Ben Shapiro and have a pissing match with him, that's not my ox. That's not my grain, is it? Right. Okay. Now, if I've got members of my audience coming to me and saying, hey, did the bad guys win WW2? Well, now it's treading my grain. I got to speak up. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay. That's how it works. And that's how it should work for everybody. And this is what it means to have a coalition, not to mention a family. Paula White is the crazy aunt. You were kind of hoping that this Thanksgiving you were not going to have to invite. Okay? And then the patriarch of the family, the guy who pays all the bills for everybody else, and after we put him in the ground, we're all gathering to hear what his will has to bequeath to all the rest of us, right? That guy who sits at the head of the table is like, I just really have a soft spot for that crazy aunt. So, first chair. And we're all sitting and licking at each other like, the minute that this guy we love this guy. We love the patriarch. But 3 seconds after he's room temperature, her ass is never coming back again. Right? Right after the will is read, never coming back. All right? But for now, because overall, what's best for the family is what's best for the family at this particular moment. Because he's a good patriarch. He's doing right now what you want for the most part, what you want a patriarch to do, right?
Right.
So is this the time to blow all of that up? Because he just, for whatever reason, has a soft spot for the crazy-ass aunt. You might think the answer is yes. I think it's no. I can promise you, if we were not having all the successes on many fronts that we are having right now, we'd have done a whole show about Paula White like yesterday. But we are having those successes, aren't we?
Right.
So then you have to make a moral calculation. All right? If I fixate on Paula White, Am I now getting in the way of the ox treading its grain? My decision, and since whose name's on the marquee here over my shoulder? Mine. Who signed you guys' checks? Me. So ultimately, who's on the hook for all of this in the end? Who's ultimately responsible for it?
That guy.
That's me. And I accept that. So I'm the one that makes those calls, and then I have to live with the benefits or liabilities of said decisions, right? Okay? I am making the decision. This is not the time or the place to have a Paula White conversation. First of all, it's not new. I mean, this has been a 10 plus year relationship that these two people have. So that would be another thing too. Like if everything was going great and then all of a sudden like arch heretic shows up, then you'd be like, whoa, let's call a timeout here. But was this breaking news to you yesterday that Paula White and Donald Trump have a relationship?
It was not.
It was not. So again, I would understand even if things were going well and like Trump's faith council was like, the people that will show up at the evangelical enclave that you called for last hour, right? Okay. And then out of nowhere, he's like, all right, guys, and we're done here with with this learned scholar. Let me do this. Guys, I've changed my mind. I was going to have Jack Hibbs run my faith council. All right. And the first few weeks have been great. But, I woke up this morning and I'm kind of feeling this Paula White. That would be different too, right? If she came out of nowhere, right? But she's been here for a bit, correct?
Right.
So this is not anything new. Okay. So her and Trump have been attached at the hip. They were attached at the hip in 2016. They were attached at the hip in 2020. Had they been attached at the hip for the first 3 weeks of the Trump administration? Yeah. And overall, are we not all very pleased?
Right.
Right. So I have to ask myself, do I muzzle the ox while it's treading its grain if I choose to make this my fixated fight? I might be wrong. And if I am, I'll bear the consequences for that. And I'll have to admit that later. But I don't think I am, so I won't. And I also think a lot of the people that are pushing me to get involved in this really want the Trump administration to fail so they can be vindicated.
For sure.
And I have no interest in that either. So I have no idea why the patriarch of the family in good standing that everybody admires more than they ever have decides that there's this one crazy aunt that we all know is crazy. We all can see she's crazy. Why he has a soft spot in for her in particular, I don't know. But you know what? Because he keeps the lights on. He makes sure he's doing the role of patriarch. He protects, he defends, he provides. I will yield to when it's my turn to be patriarch, and then that crazy aunt will be gone, and then I'll probably have my own crazy uncle that I like and nobody else does, and they'll have to do the same thing for me. Therefore, by the grace of God, go I. Your thoughts, Todd?
Well, another thing that's causing a lot of people problems is that they clearly think they're a little bit too attached to Trump in the religious sense. Like, he's not the Holy Roman Emperor. And because I think, listen, I'm with Steve. Like, I'm just looking at the results. And trust me, when that person before said, how did you know, Steve? He didn't. I didn't. All I knew is I knew what Biden was going to give. Mm-hmm. And I knew that there was just an opportunity with Trump. And so far, 3 weeks in, wildly exceeded my expectations. I just knew it wasn't a guaranteed failure. But I'm also never going to anoint him as the second coming, nor should you. And because some of the problems along those lines, now all of a sudden you're shocked, as Steve said, didn't come out of nowhere. Has been there all along, has never been denounced. I don't know.
By the way, Pat Buchanan is still with us. My mistake. So didn't want to do a...
Oh, did you do about... Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did a premature obituary there. So my bad, Pat. Don't hurt me.
I just want to go back to something I said a few weeks ago. You need to reframe your mind personally and then at the civic level. Do the most good you can do with the time that God has given you. And in some circumstances, get used to people that you had written off that you're not used to or wouldn't expect to do good, doing good things in the time that God has given them. Maybe they don't even believe in God at the level that you do. Get used to that. Operative word there is good. Just, again, don't allow your brain to be broken. The note that you just read a little bit ago, I'm happy to be wrong. Those are some of the most encouraging things that we can hear.
Yep.
Because it's a level of adult thinking that this nation, this citizenry desperately needs.
Amen to that. More Feedback Friday in a moment. Well, we all know we need options. Like our friend Tim Young was just talking to us last hour. He's working on a project on an app right now that you can find out whether that company has been working against our value system. But what about companies that have already proven they're for our value system? Well, one of them, our friends, our longstanding friends at Patriot Mobile. They are on the cutting edge of the parallel economy with a product we all need nowadays to be, sufficient in modern society. That's our mobile phones. You can make the switch today so that you're no longer directly giving your money to people who hate you. Get the same coverage you get from everybody else, but from a company that, number one, gives you a 100% US-based customer service team, so you can hear them every single time, understand them. And then number two, will then take your profits and reinvest them back into your values. All right. That company, it's the same mobile phone provider that we use, Patriot Mobile. Make the switch today. If you do, they'll get you started with a free month of service if you use the promo code Steve. Free month of service with the promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, get started with a free month of service with the promo code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, back to some Feedback Friday. Eric Olson says, I served in the Army for nearly 15 years, and I have never even heard of the family being able to keep the name of a casualty from being released. I didn't even know that was a thing, and I kind of doubt that it is. Then when the name was leaked, the few pictures available have the female captain posing with pride flags. He's talking about the crash in D.C. last week. Posing with pride flags and walking around the White House with VIPs. This just doesn't happen. A VIP flight platoon leader doesn't attend official White House events. Next, we were told this was a very experienced crew. The captain pilot in command had 450 flight hours, and the instructor pilot had 1,000 hours. And as a platoon leader in my first platoon, I had 750 hours, and my platoon instructor pilot had more than 1,700. And this was before the global war on terror, which increased those hours drastically. In fact, if the instructor had just been below 1,000 hours and the captain under 500 hours, it would have been classified as a higher risk mission in my unit. Next, the reports are saying this captain was on her second platoon, making the 450 hours even more astonishingly low, but also no one gets a second line platoon. I was able to get a second platoon because it was in maintenance, but not in a line platoon. My guess, based on information available right now, is this pilot was a young female lesbian who had the demographic look Biden was going for and was hand-selected to be the face of the VIP unit by Biden's woke DOD. This could explain why she had so few hours and how she got a second platoon in the VIP unit. This also accounts for her being invited to White House social events instead of building her flight experience, which is what I was doing at that part of my career. I have also heard from more pilots who have flown there, and the Black Hawk route was absolutely below 200 feet and over the eastern shore of the river. This Black Hawk was flying at 375 feet closer to the middle of the river. The regional jet should cross the eastern bank of the river around 450 to 500 feet. 300 feet of vertical separation doesn't seem like much, but in a congested airspace, it's very reasonable. And mind you, the 200-foot altitude was the maximum. If I was cleared at 200 feet maximum, I would typically fly at 100 or 150 feet maximum because I don't want to get anywhere near that maximum altitude. That is from Eric Olson. So, Aaron, you've got a pilot in the family. You have pursued some of your own piloting escapades. Can you make some sense of this for us at all?
Well, this is controlled airspace, obviously, so I'm not an expert at this by any means, but I can articulate for layman's terms. Everybody is on notice when you are in controlled airspace, and this typical controlled airspace, I think it's either a Class A or Class C, but it's the busiest and most controlled airspace. Or maybe it's Class D, I can't remember. Airspace, it's the most controlled and buttoned up airspace that you can fly into. Some of the most congested airspace that you could fly into. So any major metropolitan area, it's going to have this very highly controlled airspace, whether you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, Houston, San Antonio, just naming big cities. Once you approach this airspace, air traffic control knows where you are, knows how high you are, what your intentions are, where you're going, and you have a very specific spot in line. You have to stay under or at certain altitudes as ATC tells you to do. It sounds like this pilot in the Black Hawk, even though they are military, they don't just get to do whatever they want to do when they're in controlled airspace. They were supposed to, what I heard was 100 feet. What this listener is saying is it's a 200-foot maximum. You have to stay at or below 200 feet. You have to. That's not just an option. You have to stay at or below that ceiling, because everybody else is following exactly to a T what ATC is telling them to do. I've also heard, I think New York Post reported this as well, whoever was at ATC, Air Traffic Control, who was in charge of helicopters, was also doing other duties that night as well. And so maybe they lost control because ATC would be able to see, hey, this helicopter is nearly twice what the altitude that it should be. Mm-hmm. And they would be yelling at them to get down, to lose altitude. So cascading errors one way or another. There's no way, in my opinion, there's no way that there is not some recording of communication somewhere that would say, hey, Black Hawk, whatever your call sign is, do you copy? Do you read me? Do you see? I mean, there was, I think, recordings saying, hey, do you see the jet? Yes. Great. But there should have been some communication saying, hey, you're not at you're way above your ceiling. You need to lose altitude immediately. If that's not there, then I'd say it's probably on ATC and the pilot. But primarily, I think pilots going into this airspace know, especially if you're helicopter, because there's special rules for helicopters, as I've learned. You have to stay below this ceiling, this altitude ceiling, and this pilot obviously did not do that. So I'm not sure what the totality or the superlative, I guess, blame lies, but I think it's kind of a both and with the ATC operator and the pilot, from what I have read. So I just want to underscore.
Go ahead.
In I think it is Class D airspace like this, is highly, highly controlled. Air traffic control knows where everybody is and how high everybody is.
Or is supposed to.
And is supposed to, and knows where they're going. Mm-hmm. So something like this would be just a cataclysmic error on air traffic control if it goes down that route, which it seems like it is.
So when this happened, Pete Hegseth had been on the job for like 36 hours, right? So I mean, most of his appointments aren't going to be in place.
Sean Duffy had been on the job less than 24 hours.
Correct.
So I think he was sworn in that very evening, actually.
So much of the apparatus that disseminates news to the media that pre-existed Hegseth would be that same apparatus at the time that this went down, right?
Right.
Okay. So with that being said, if this pilot were... if there was a bunch of it was a white male and a bunch of social media with them wearing a MAGA hat, think we get 2 days of waiting to identify who it is and then have their entire social media scrub before they tell us?
This is a very crucial point you are making.
I'm sorry, it's Class B airspace. I want to correct that.
Thank you.
Of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah.
100%.
Which is
so then
why,
what does that tell you? What does that tell you then?
It tells me that I'm going this can't happen again. What you said about not releasing her name immediately with the other names, I don't know. What's the timetable you're expecting to hear something? I mean, we have the black boxes. The people that came out and said, "Let the people grieve." These seem to be people on the right, again, who are like, "I have to defend cops. I have to defend the military, no matter what." This wasn't just one helicopter with 3 people that died in a crash landing. 70 people are dead in another plane, okay? Yeah. My clock is ticking, definitely by the end of February. And I'm thinking that's probably waiting too long. We need to know.
Help me understand then why, if you think we just automatically give the military the benefit of the doubt, why were you even supporting Pete Hegseth for DOD then?
Right.
What was the reason we took on the fight of a non-traditional nominee who does have the peccadillos in his life that he brought to the table? Why did we take that fight on then? Why not just tell Trump to just go get some general who has been married to the same woman for 45 years and kept a low profile as a pencil pusher and put him in charge and rally around the flag? I mean, the only reason we took on the fight of putting a disruptor like that in there is because we all agree that it's lost the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
If it had the benefit of the doubt, there would have been no point to the Hegseth nomination in the first place.
Exactly. That's why this is such a crucial point.
All right. I want to see if you guys believe this is a crucial point, particularly you, Todd, because your family is in a somewhat similar situation. All right. This is from James Caravias. He says, I know you guys are all excited about DOGE, but you don't work for the government. My wife and I voted for Trump and fully believe in what he is doing. But having said that, my Christian wife, who's an examiner and is about to retire, has run into a wall of unanswered questions from her own HR department. For example, she was on her vacation when Trump signed the executive order because she was out on approved leave. Her Thursday date, according to her supervisor, should be deferred those days so she has more time to decide because she was on vacation whether she wants to take the buyout or not. However, the HR department has no answers. Her union has no answers, and so my wife is stuck. At the moment, there is no clear indication if the examiners are exempt because of the union contract that is in place for remote work may or may not apply in their case. I think that Musk and Trump have no idea how confused that many of these people are and wonder why only a few have taken the buyout. It's over 60,000 have taken the buyout, right? But there
Quite a few, yeah.
That could also be a drop in the bucket overall too, right? Okay. In my wife's case, she will be vested on February 20th for full retirement and benefits because that date will be 5 years, which is the requirement. But here again, the great and mighty DOGE has not one clue what they are putting these employees through. My wife is not the only one. It's a sad day when you guys at the Blaze have not even looked at the good people affected and don't even show the slightest empathy for some of these hard workers. I can say that these examiners have to put out a % output or they will get fired. My wife on a 40-hour week puts in 50 hours or more to keep up to that level that is expected, but she doesn't complain one bit. Why do you ask? Because she is a hardworking Christian who has a great work ethic. If she had to go back into the office, she would have to go back to Dallas from Pennsylvania. So that's from James Caravias. Thoughts?
What the hell are you coming after us for, James?
I don't know. I'm asking. I thought we should check ourselves. I'm fine with that.
No, but he just said you guys have showed zero empathy. Like, enough. If you are so easily turned into a victim, you may be a lot of things, but you're not a real conservative. All right? Everybody, you're two adults. You made your choices. This government has been out of control for a long time. I do understand the nuances of your situation personally, but look at you.
Should we mention why without maybe getting to some specifics, and keep your family? But your wife works at an agency that could be on the chopping block.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. It's possible.
And you guys have talked about that, and we've had those conversations. That may happen, right?
But it's not you're taking this personally so much that you actually just came after us. This is why I talk so much about the things I do that make us soft and we're way too comfortable. What? You got too comfortable. What can I say? You thought you could get between these raindrops? All right? Judgment Day is here. All right? I don't know what to tell you. I hope your wife doesn't get fired. I hope that there's eyes wide open about looking into situations where not everybody has hated their country within the federal government.
Like she's vested on February 20th. That's like a week and a half. I'm sure we could make some accommodation for something like that.
Yes, but you also burn them as if they simply don't care. What evidence are you presenting of that? Guys, this is why this is not sustainable ultimately at the end of the day. It's because of how quickly we turn into thumbsuckers on our side. This was never an entirely safe endeavor from a conservative perspective. The things if you're really conservative and you weren't rooting for some of these things to happen, and you didn't know on some level if they happened, the degree to which you may or may not be caught up in it. We're not even close to wise as serpents on ours. This makes me more mad than the liberal montage because our side just sucks a lot. It absolutely sucks. And quite frankly, it took a guy like Donald Trump to save us from ourselves.
So what does this individual's spouse do, did they say?
Didn't say, no.
But works for an agency of the federal government.
Yes. Yeah.
Have we not made it clear on this show? Maybe this has changed. The show position is that the only government employees who have a rightful and moral claim to you and I and everybody's listening's tax dollars who is a citizen of this country: firefighters, first responders, police officers, and members of the military, correct?
Correct.
And
everybody else is basically a subsidy.
A loss leader.
Yes.
A loss leader.
Yeah.
I don't know, given the tenor of this email, if this will be taken in the spirit that it is intended. But boy, howdy. You have to be cheering. I don't want you to lose your income, okay?
No.
But if you really want for your own posterity to save this country, we have to think like adults. We have to think like adults. Again, like Todd was saying, you are adults. You made your decisions. Did you not go into the federal government, working for the federal government, not knowing that every single job outside of the job descriptions that I just listed off is a loss leader.
How many people in our audience that work in the private sector thought that they were just going to have those jobs forever?
No, this is a level of infantilization that we cannot cope with long term. I'm sorry. I know that sounds mean, and I do not wish you to lose your income. But good grief, let's take a look at the big picture here.
That big picture is that we've just discovered that the federal government for years now has been raping the American taxpayer to subvert the very foundations of this nation. And this is your biggest lament? This is what we're not, whatever you are, you're not a citizen if you're coming to me to this, and you have no desire to be. We must do better. We must expect more of ourselves.
Can I make a personal?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, there's been talk on and on. I don't know if we talked about this on the air. You know, some days, some maybe we might have to move to Dallas to do this show. Maybe.
Yeah.
If that day comes, I'm not sure if I'd go with it. I'm an adult. I can make those conversations. I might have to manage a Casey's and learn how to divide fractions, okay? But I'm an adult. I'm not entitled to this job.
Don't take that for granted. Okay, but go ahead.
I'm not entitled. No, none of us are entitled to anything. It might not work. It might not work for me in my situation with my family. Yeah. But I know I'm not entitled to this thing. It's a great gig, but I'm not. You might wake up tomorrow and, hey, Aaron was arrested for too many jaywalking. I've got to fire him. He's a felon now. I'm not entitled to keep the job. Not saying that you're a felon, the emailer's a felon. Nobody is entitled to anything here.
I'm so glad you read this letter. Everybody out there listening to this, hold that letter up to yourself this weekend as a mirror and find that part of you that has any inkling of leaning in this way and deal with it. Because whatever it is, it's not conservative and it's not really it's not Christian either. It's idolatrous.
Well, I tried, dude. Have a great weekend. Romans 8:28.